Aloha! I really appreciate Jordan leading us with the prayer chain and the fasting chain, along with signing up for Ohana groups. What a great way to start 2022, to be connected with God and with each other. All right, last time we were introduced to King Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. We explored the answer to the question, what's the point of life? And if you've never stopped to think about this question for your life, believe me, you will one day. Time and time again, Solomon came up with the observation that everything in life is meaningless, a chasing after the wind, especially if God is not in the picture. Now, early in the book, you get the sense how pessimistic Solomon is about life. Why? Well, it's all because he tried it all. He had it all. And every time he searched for meaning and fulfillment through the world, it always ended up empty. It wasn't what you expected. And that's the point of it all, isn't it? If you think you're going to find meaning and fulfillment through the world, it's going to come up empty. Why? Because God didn't create you and me to settle for the temporary things of this world. We're eternal beings, and only eternal elements like faith, hope, and love can satisfy our greatest needs. Only an eternal being named Jesus can meet all of our needs. All right, so another common question that so many ask themselves is this: where can I find true happiness? Solomon asked this question 3,000 years ago in so many words. In Ecclesiastes 6:6 in the Living Bible, it says, "Though a man lives 1,000 years twice over but doesn't find contentment, well, what's the use?" In other words, what does it matter how long I live if I don't enjoy life while I'm living? What's the use? Solomon was uniquely qualified for this lifelong search for happiness. He was the wisest man who ever lived. And not only that, he was also the wealthiest man who ever lived. He had both brains and bucks. He was king. He had the resources. So he set out to discover, what is it that makes people happy? He passionately searched out all areas in life. And once again, you'll see that these were not the source of lasting happiness. On their own, none of these things ultimately satisfy. Here's the point. We need to learn from this man's experience. We need to learn from his wisdom. Solomon is giving us his life hacks, his shortcuts. And all of us will be wiser and far better off and accelerate our growth a lot faster if we apply what he's teaching us. All right, let me summarize chapter 1, verses 12 through 18 in Ecclesiastes. Solomon pursued education. In our times, he went to college, got his master's, went on to get his PhD and beyond. He said, I thought if I just knew more, I would enjoy life more and find meaning. I studied and learned all these things, but I discovered that the more I learned, the more I realized how unlearned I am. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all in for education. One of the best investments you can ever make is to continue learning personally. However, the pursuit of education on its own will not fulfill you. Did you know that a lot of people who go to college don't even use what they learned in their current occupation? Higher education can be very costly and put one deeply in debt, especially if one doesn't know what they want to do in life. Now, in Solomon's world, the more he learned, the more sorrow and grief were brought into his life. You see, Solomon wanted life to be explained. He wanted answers. He was searching for these things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a challenge to it. People who go through life living on explanations will always be unhappy and unsatisfied for a couple reasons. First, now this side of heaven, there are going to be a lot of things in life where there's not going to get an explanation of why things happen the way they do. And God's chosen not to explain everything to us. And most likely, we're not going to understand them anyway. Good book to read is the book of Job. And secondly, God commands His people to live by promises and not by explanations. He commands us to live by faith and not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 7. Jesus even says in John 20, verse 29, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." So education alone didn't ultimately satisfy Solomon, and it won't on its own fulfill you either. So make sure you and your family keep the pursuit of higher education in perspective. Then in chapter 2, verse 1 through 11, let's read what Solomon continued to do. The Bible says, as Solomon speaks, "I thought in my heart, come now, I'll test you with pleasure to find out what's good." But that also proved to be meaningless. "Laughter," I said, "is foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish?" I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself, planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women singers and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Whoa, I'm exhausted just thinking about all this. Solomon sought everything. He sought pleasure. He tried laughter. He said, I'll hang out at the comedy clubs. I'm going to surround myself with lots of people who tell funny jokes. Then he tried wine, going to cocktail parties, becoming a wine connoisseur. Maybe that will make me happy. It's ironic, isn't it, that some of the most unhappy people you'll ever meet in life, you'll find at happy hour. Then he tried good times. He became a party animal, the social scene. Have fun and more fun. Go from one party to another. But when the party was over, Solomon examined his heart, and it was still dissatisfied and empty. Then Solomon poured himself into achievement and work. He said, I'm just going to immerse myself in work. I'm going to try to find fulfillment by doing great public works. I'm going to build homes. I'm going to plant gardens. I'm going to build parks and reservoirs. I'll build a great empire. But once again, you can see Solomon say, I can work and work and work, but what's the use? Solomon had everything. He had servants. He had possessions. He had wealth. He had everything, but he still wasn't fulfilled or satisfied. So what do you do when you have everything you've ever wanted and it's still not enough? Solomon was having a major midlife crisis. Imagine having everything and yet still being unfulfilled in life. That was Solomon's predicament. He had it all. He tried it all. He spent it all, but he was still unsatisfied. Then he tried sexual escapades. He bought a harem. The Good News Translation says, I had all the women a man could want and then some. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines, polygamy to the extreme. He went way beyond the limits and found that didn't satisfy. Solomon is saying, if you think having an affair or multiple relationships are going to satisfy you, you got it all wrong. You'll find that the emptiness increases as the number goes up. Bottom line, pleasure promises more than it can deliver. It doesn't last, and it can leave you unfulfilled, guilty, empty and unsatisfied. It's not what you expected. So why is the book of Ecclesiastes even in the Bible? I think God is trying to teach us that there are dead ends in life which you can avoid. Save your time, save your money. Happiness is not found solely in these things. But wait a minute, Anthony, this is what most people do in life. They wholeheartedly throw themselves into all these areas of life. Are you saying that if I live for these things, then at the end of my life, I'll find myself empty and unfulfilled? That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying, but more importantly, God is saying, if you don't have me at the center, everything else will be meaningless, a chasing after the wind. You see, with God, everything has its proper perspective and can be enjoyed the way it's supposed to be enjoyed. Education, work, money, possessions, even sex, because God created sex, can be wonderful. But what have we done as a human race? We've polluted these things. We've exploited these things. We've sinned against God and others with our pride, arrogance, greed, and lust. Solomon was looking for happiness in the wrong places, and many in the world do the same. So, Anthony, if those things don't bring ultimate happiness on their own, then what does? Here's the key for you and me. If you're going to find happiness, true happiness, you have to personally then make a shift in your understanding and your purpose. What do I mean? If we're living life looking to just take care of ourselves, we're missing the point why we even exist. We'll never find happiness in this world because our lives weren't meant to live just for ourselves, but for God and for other people. And who shows us the way? Jesus. Jesus set the example of what a truly happy and fulfilled life looked like. It requires living for others and not just self. You see, God's way of pursuing happiness is radically different from the world's way of finding happiness. Solomon just showed us what the majority of the world do when God's not in the picture. Jesus shows us differently, by his words and by example. Jesus shows us the way. And one part of the Bible he actually shows us is in Matthew chapter 5. It's the most famous sermon in history. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And he gives us the secrets of happiness called the Beatitudes, and these are what we need to be working towards. So in addition to hearing them today, these Beatitudes, I want to encourage you to read and reflect on them on your own, because these can serve as a compass for you to provide you with fulfillment. All right, so stay with me here, guys. I want to end this lesson by giving you brief insights from Matthew 5, verses 3 through 10. Do you want to know Jesus' path to happiness? Well, here they are. Let's read them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Didn't I tell you this is radically different from the world's pursuit? Jesus' way is so different than what the majority of us here in this world pursue. Now, first of all, the word blessed from the original translates makarios, which means happy. So these passages describe how followers of Christ should live, and each beatitude tells us how to be happy, to be blessed. Now, here's something very important for us to be able to understand. To be blessed means more than happiness. It means to be favored and approved by God. So what does that mean? It means if you pursue this way of thinking, this way of life, you are favored and approved by God. You know, to know that God is pleased with you, to know that God is happy with you and approves you because of this pursuit and the way that you go, the natural and spiritual product will be a deep happiness in your life. Now, most don't want to go down this road. It's the road less traveled because God's way of living usually contradicts the world. So what does Jesus tell us how to be truly happy, favored, and approved by God? Okay, here we go. You might want to write these things down. In so many words, number one, coming from the Beatitudes, number one, admit your need for God. You got to be poor in spirit. Jesus explains that God blesses those who realizes their need for Him, for the kingdom of heaven is given to them. The first step toward happiness is to recognize your real need. If anything but God is at the center of your life, you will not be satisfied. We are spiritual human beings, and if God is not the center of the life, you'll be left unsatisfied. You were made to know God, and your greatest need is to know Him. So stop trying to find replacements. The sooner you figure that out, the more blessed, the happier your life is going to be. Number two, trust God when life is disappointing. Life is a combination of pleasure and pain. We all know this. It's not all fun and games. Even as a disciple, you're going to have problems in life, and there can be a lot of heartache. If you have to live problem-free in order to be happy, you're never going to be happy. If you're dependent upon circumstances to make you happy, you're going to be miserable most of your life. You have to learn to trust in problem situations while you're perhaps unemployed or going through a difficult time or going through a trial in life, or maybe you're ill or sick, or maybe you've just recently lost a loved one. These are all challenging times in life. Mourning and grief is part of that experience. What do you do when you're hurting? You let God handle the hurts. Remember, no matter what you're going through right now, you're not alone. Trust God when life is disappointing, and that will help you be happy, even when things aren't going your way. Number three, live life with humility. The words translated gently and lowly convey humility and trust in God. You see, gentle and lowly people don't look down on themselves, but they don't think too highly of themselves either. There's a healthy balance. Ironically, it will not be the arrogant and the wealthy, people who get everything in life. Instead, the whole earth, as Jesus says, will belong to the gentle. And Jesus uses this word earth to refer to the future inheritance of the kingdom. We can read about in Revelation 21 and 22 how believers will enjoy a new heaven and a new earth. We have inheritance waiting for us. Number four, follow God's instructions. We have to have a hunger and thirst for righteousness. And if you have a passion for God's guidance and do what God tells you to do, you'll be satisfied. The fact is, God wants you to enjoy life and not just endure it. And so every principle and rule or command in the Bible is there for our benefit. The closer you follow, the more blessed your life is going to be, and God will meet your needs. Number five, cultivate a forgiving heart. Blessed are the merciful. Merciful people realize that because they receive mercy from God, they must extend mercy to others. Mercy in our lives produces generosity, compassion, and forgiveness. The fact is, in life, you're going to be hurt. There will be people who hurt you intentionally or unintentionally. You're also going to hurt others. So remember how God treats you. What matters is your response to that hurt. If you choose to be filled with bitterness or resentment, hold on to a grudge against people who hurt you, then you're only hurting yourself. For example, if I'm resentful against you because something you've done to me, that doesn't hurt you. It's only hurting me. Now, some of you may be allowing people who hurt you in the past to continue to hurt you in the present memories. Why? They can't hurt you anymore unless you allow them to. Jesus says, for your own sake, learn to cultivate a merciful, forgiving heart. That's a pathway to true happiness. Number 6, maintain a clear conscience. The happiest people are those who live with integrity and purity. Guilt destroys happiness. Jesus died on the cross for you so that you could be forgiven and have the strength not to be mastered by sin. Confess your sins to God and to others who can help you. 7, build healthy relationships. How many people do you know who have built great careers but lost their marriage in the process? Or made a lot of money but lost their kids or their family? Doesn't matter how much money you make or what you achieve in this world. If you get to the top of your career, your occupation, or climbing up that corporate ladder, all of a sudden there's nobody there close to share with it. What's the use? How many people in their older years have nobody around them? A lot has to do with the fact that they may not have focused on having healthy, peacekeeping relationships throughout the years. Blessed are those who are peacemakers. If you're unhappy or unsatisfied, maybe you need to do some relational repair. And then lastly, live with an eternal perspective. Jesus doesn't say happy are those who are persecuted because they are obnoxious or religious fanatics that irritate everyone. No, he says blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Doing the right thing in life is not always easy, but you will have eternity to enjoy the rewards for doing good. It will last forever. So guys, these are some really brief points and some framework of Jesus giving us a pathway to true happiness. And everyone who goes through this path is going to be blessed. It's a fulfillment that the world can't provide, but only for those choosing to go down the path that Jesus shows us. Solomon, the wealthiest and wisest man who ever lived, said, "Let me save you some time. I tried it all. I did it all. I had it all. I experienced it all, and it's not there." God is telling us there is more to life than just the here and now. So where do we find true happiness? You can find true happiness not in the world, but in Jesus Christ and following His ways. Now, for those who are new to all this and you want to learn more about the Bible, please reach out to us and we'll do all that we can to help and support you in your journey. Only in the Lord can we experience true, lasting happiness. Enjoy, and God bless.
Thank you so much for joining us for service today. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Have a great rest of your day. Bye!